Hello, 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 and good evening to everyone here at Pakhuis de Zwijger in the Caribbean Netherlands, in the European Netherlands, at the TV station called Salto, but also, if you're looking at this, at a later point in time. I welcome you here. I hope you're snacking, enjoying what is here. If we're speaking a little bit too quickly, I will slow down over time. We have slides as well, but I'll be your moderator today. My name is Percy Cecilia Jr. I'm half American, half Antillean, fully Dutch. I like how that sinks in. But we're here because we're all in a major, major boat. A boat that not all of us feel the same way. If we're in the Netherlands, we're already used to being partially underwater. But if you're on an island, you just might be affected a little bit more. If you were here today, it's because you're interested in hearing just a little bit more about how small island developing states are, well, in a more difficult state than we are, how they might be affected by the current political situations, but we will not go fully into that. But what we'll also be doing today is going through the 4 different methods of how people can change, how people can activate change, campaign for change, or even protest for change. Now, just want to make a quick check though. Can the people online hear me well? And just a quick nod over there will give me a presence to know it. Awesome. And the people here can hear me well as well? Just a thumb or a nod or just a chew sound? Awesome sauce. I like thumbs. Now, for the people online, you can join in with questions on the Mentimeter. That will be for later, but I just want to mention it now. And also, at the end, don't leave without scanning the QR code, all of you. I'll repeat that later again. Now, if you want to go to the Mentimeter here as well, if you feel shy not to ask the questions in person, I understand that. Don't feel bad about them. Niet iedereen is in Engels. Net zo makkelijk. Podem perguntar no pagamento assim assim porque. But go to the Mentimeter, use the code. I'll read it once out loud. 46140480. Dramatic silence. Menti silence. I meant to make that. Now, we started a little bit later, so we will be going through a program just a little bit quicker. And with that, I mean, I want to actually immediately tell you a small little lecture on, well, what SIDS are. And if you're American, you might have gotten scared by that too. You want the mic closer to me? Further. Is this better? Just making a check with you? Still good then? Cool. I'm sorry, I can't see y'all. It's blinding lights. I see a very nice yellow jumper here, but besides that, I can't see much. It's colorful people on all sides here. But we'll start this off with a small little introduction to SIDS and to climate change. I have a question for you here, and this part, I'm just going to use the people right in front of me. You know what climate change is? Do you experience it? Okay, now, funny enough, if you walk on the street, some people will say climate change is not something that all of us experience. Yes, I see it. It happens over there, but not here. I feel the weather changing a little bit, but is it really climate change? It's climate adjustment. It's a little bit warmer. It's a season. Isn't there a little child somewhere in Latin America, La Niña, El Niño, that affects change? Something like that, right? So climate change in this case is a more extreme change that we've ourselves have actually caused, related to, pushed through in the name of technology, advancement, etc. But the effects, that's what climate change is mostly about as well. It's not that the Earth won't survive us. It will. Gaia, or whatever name you give it, will be there long after us. Our clothes, polyester and all, might outlast us. But with climate change, we're talking about the regions, the peoples, the cultures, the ethnicities, the languages, and also the beautiful images that are lost, the peoples who can't dream anymore because of this. People who have to change their reality aspects because of this. Now, when we talk about climate change, we use big metaphors. We say the water rises by a certain amount of percent or a certain amount of meters. We say the temperature may rise by a certain amount of degrees. We can say that salination, so the way that the salt is present in our waters or in our grounds, that may actually affect us poorly. But what we don't very often say, and that's what we're here for today, is that for every time we buy a set of clothing here, someone elsewhere is paying the price, not just with labor, but with lower upward mobility than we have. When we trade one item for another, maybe this silence should be accompanying everything. So the climate change that we want to talk about today is the way that over the last few years, we've industrially really put in way too much effort into wasting our green images, wearing good cars, dear Lord, driving good cars that are electronic and wearing a badge that says that we're doing that, but also eating more vegan or vegetarian. And we do affect that. But what we don't do is actually look up for the resilience of the countries that are being affected, such as if we don't research the way the Greenpeace and the the UV has done. De VU, I think it was, Vereniging VU. Geen UvA, er zijn twee verschillende universiteiten. Eentje goed met protestant. Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about that, right? Listen, I'm going to be real about it. We are in a political climate where certain things aren't spoken about, so that's where you keep seeing my leg if you're here that is tapping. I'm from Green Left in Wageningen, and that's in the back of my head. But climate change right here, those parties are talking the same nonsense. So, back to the electronic chars and all the clothing that we can do. With climate change today, we have people that can speak about it a lot better, because I wanted to give you a big lecture about it, but A, most of you already know that. But the small island states and the ones that are doing most of the work back in Aruba, in Sint Maarten, Bonaire, Curaçao, Statia, and Saba. I want to introduce two people, actually, that are there as well, that are doing so well. And since I never want to get the names wrong, and I'm looking at you, hopefully directly in the online screen as well, I'm going to ask Nigel, because your name I can say properly, to introduce yourself, and then after that, Madame. Nigel, could you introduce yourself, please, to the people here?
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nigel. I'm from Aruba, Nigel Maduro. I'm from Aruba. I'm an intersectional environmental activist, a sustainability scientist, and also a multidisciplinary artist. And yeah, I'm very excited for tonight to see. Yeah, I can't see people's faces, but yeah,
Same here.
I'm very excited to be talking to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, I'm going to try it in because it's very weird to say second person online. Riddhi, am I saying your name right? Okay, could you introduce yourself too, and please take your time.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Riddhi Samtani. I'm from the beautiful island of Sint Maarten. Like Nigel, I'm also an intersectional climate activist, movement builder, community organizer, and professionally, I'm an environmental consultant. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. I wish I could be there in person and see all of your faces, but really looking forward to this event. Thank you.
Well, same here. I've been quite jealous actually, because y'all have been on a camp together that, that I was not invited to, but one of my best friends, Oriana Wouters, was, and so I'm going to leave that as a placeholder and say, why are you here today, Riddhi? Why did you come today to talk to us about climate change? And I'm going to start with Riddhi.
Yeah, well, I think that for me personally, being born and raised on Sint Maarten, I had very little interaction with my brothers and sisters in the other islands, Bonaire, Curaçao, Aruba, Statia. And most of all, I went to school in the United States. And the biggest disconnect that I've had is with the Netherlands. I have a Dutch passport. However, I haven't been there that often. And I've come to realize that a lot of the decisions and the collective bodies of government working together, there is a huge divide and disconnect between the Caribbean part of the Netherlands and the European part of the Netherlands. So I'm so happy that this sort of forum exists to kind of bridge that gap, especially because we are also deeply connected by water, by rising sea levels, and changing climates. So climate change really isn't just a SIDS issue or a Netherlands issue. It is a kingdom issue. And so I'm very excited to be here to kind of bridge that gap and connect with other more young people who are in this space and yeah, share a little bit of knowledge.
And that knowledge sharing that you do, you said that you are looking forward to that actually, but you've also worked towards that by inspiring people to come together, 120 youths, I remember reading. My question to you would be then, how did it feel to bring all these groups together to be able to share this, as you say, as you point out with advocacy? How was that?
Yeah, so I think when I first started trying to connect the dots, okay, we are the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We have the Kaas Islands, the Bes Islands. This is the constitutional structure. I realized then that, I'm trying so hard to connect with the European part of the Netherlands, but the solutions that exist in the European part of the Netherlands don't fit the contexts that I come from. because I come from the Caribbean. And yet that we are in the Caribbean, we're considered European. And we're not really connected with our Caribbean neighbors like Jamaica, Barbuda, you know? And what I realized is that we need to come together as a region, because it's not just the Dutch islands, it's also the French islands, it's also the British Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands that are very much within the Caribbean region, but disconnected from the Caribbean movement. And so this camp was really to bring all of the young movement builders across the Caribbean region, despite political borders and political nationalities, but as one people in the same sea. And how can we share best practice? How can we connect more deeply and foster deep connections and amplify each other's voices? And that was kind of the whole premise of the camp, that the Caribbean is very fragmented. How do we get movement builders in one place to have one big voice?
Run for president. Sorry. Wow. Whew, that came from somewhere deep. I think they're looking for someone. Whew, here all week, by the way. No, but I like that y'all looked further than, and y'all's the American part of me slipping in, but I like that you looked further than the CAS and the best island groups to also see it. My question here would be, in your own view, and for the people that don't know that yet in this case, the former Dutch Antilles is split into two units. You have one that sounds like house, CAS, and the other one that sounds like a berry, Bes. So CAS is Curaçao, Aruba, and Sint Maarten, the Dutch side, not the French side, which is Sint Maarten. And then you have Bonaire, Estatia, and Saba, Bes. So that was a little highlight. Outside of these islands, because I know coming from Curaçao myself that most of these islands haven't always communally worked together cohesively. How was it to not just work with the other ones, but hear how they dealt with hurricane relief, how they dealt with resilience, how, or if you even had those conversations, really? I'm not sure if the youth also are going through the same issues.
Yeah, and Nigel, jump in whenever you want, because I would love to hear, I came from more of an organizer perspective,
yes.
Because I put a lot of effort in making it happen, but I would love to hear Nigel's perspective and chime in. But I held a session, and one of the sessions that we facilitated was just simply to go around the room. There were people from, I think, all the Caribbean islands. I think there was representation from almost every Caribbean island in the Caribbean. And the question was, have you ever experienced a hurricane, and what was that experience like? And there were, my colleagues from the Bahamas who talked about Hurricane Duran that kind of ripped the country apart. There are really traumatic experiences that we have all gone through in our own ways. I mean, we also had delegates from the Cayman Islands and, from the US Virgin Islands like St. Thomas, St. Croix, and they all had very powerful stories of either experiencing a devastating and catastrophic hurricane or being away from family and going through the trauma of not knowing whether your family was okay or not. And so Nigel, please chime in and share your experience as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so whenever there's hurricane season, it hits some of the islands in the Caribbean. So I think the best way is to learn from each other how to be more resilient from these things. So one island has another method on being more resilient to specific hurricanes, whereas, for example, in the ABC Islands, we're outside of the hurricane belt. So we wouldn't expect as many hurricanes, but now because of the climate change situation, it's becoming more frequent and it's hitting us closer. So I think it's best if we could also learn from other Caribbean islands to see how we could also be more resilient. So I think, yeah, it's also a shared experience, because we all know how a hurricane feels when it hits home, and it's only gonna get worse with the climate change situation. So it's like, learning from the other islands to see how to be more resilient and how can we help one another, because we are we're separated by sea, but we're connected by culture, so it's really much of how do we help each other, how do we learn from each other in these situations, and how do we become more resilient to hurricanes and climate change.
Exactly. And just jumping off that, when we're talking about the best in the Cass Islands, like Nigel rightfully mentioned, the ABC Islands are outside of the hurricane belt. And although their vulnerabilities are increasing due to a changing climate, the SSS Islands, Saba, Statia, and Sint Maarten, are directly in the hurricane belt, which means every year from June, which is next month, to November, we are holding our breaths, waiting to see if we are going to get a hurricane. And this year, because of the record breaking temperatures and the warming of the seas, we are expected to have up to 24 hurricanes. 24 tropical depressions, 11 of which can, turn into a category 3 hurricane or more. And I would like to not just talk about what a hurricane is. The biggest climate change disaster in the Kingdom of the Netherlands was Hurricane Irma on Sint Maarten, the country that I'm from. And I would not like to talk about it. I would love to show you what that was like for us. So I think, please take a look at this video.
C'est une catastrophe, quoi. L'île est complètement détruite, on n'a plus rien.
We don't have electricity, we don't have water, we don't have phones, we don't have internet, anything. There is a lot of damage. People are crying on the streets, they don't have nowhere to go. There were places where there were houses and now there is nothing. Not even a piece of wood, nothing.
L'eau est soulevée de la mer, mélangée à la pluie, c'est comme s'il y avait un brouillard énorme. Et là, le matin, quand ça a commencé à s'éclaircir, vers 6 heures du matin, là, on a vu que ça a été beaucoup détruit. Je ne sais pas dans combien d'années on pourra espérer que Saint-Martin se relève d'une catastrophe comme celle-là. C'est de la folie. De la folie, il n'y a plus rien.
So whenever I watch this video, I get very emotional because nothing can prepare you for seeing your country, your home, completely blown to bits. 95% of the island was completely decimated and destroyed on both sides of the island. We experienced 185 miles per hour wind speeds, which is the strongest on record wind speeds recorded ever in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I'm a Dutch citizen. I have, and I should have, the same rights as anyone who is a Dutch citizen. Yet, I'm faced with these vulnerabilities. And honestly, I wasn't even home for Hurricane Irma. I was in school studying, and I could not get in touch with my family for 3 days. So I didn't sleep for 72 hours. I was on the radio just trying to hear, are they alive? Are they okay? Are my friends okay? My great-grandfather moved to Sint Maarten in the 1960s. So 3 generations of my family is from there. My cousins, my extended family. And not knowing if your family is okay. My sister was 7 years old at the time. I don't think I can ever forget what that felt like. And of course, it's nothing compared to the lived experience of people, as you can see. But this is not a phenomenon for us. This is something that we go through every year, holding our breaths, wondering if the next tropical depression is going to turn into a hurricane in the next 72 hours. Hurricane Irma was a category 3 hurricane that turned into a category 5 in like 2 days. How do you prepare for something like that? And how do we become more resilient? And that's why, I've dedicated, you asked me why I'm here. This is why I'm here. I'm here to champion this with my fellow comrades and my colleagues. I'm here to educate and share and bring awareness that this is what we experience in the other part of the kingdom. I exist, I'm here. And how do we work together to solve this issue? Because, like I said before, climate change is not just a Caribbean or a SIDS issue, and it's not just the Netherlands issue, because the Netherlands is equally threatened by a rising sea level.
True.
I mean, they have developed the best mitigation measures to stay above water, right? So how do we enable that transfer of knowledge, the transfer of technology, and how do we work together as a kingdom to be all safe, right? And to be resilient against a changing climate.
Can I ask you a question? Because we are 7 years further, and your sister now, I'm assuming, is 7 years older. How can you look at the relief efforts, before we go into the hypothetical of how we can work together, of course, how have the relief efforts been in Sint Maarten, both sides, so Sint Maarten and Sint Maarten?
So Sint Maarten is the most unique within the Dutch kingdom because, we do not have full sovereignty over the entire landmass. We're the smallest entity in the world to be shared by 2 European nations. The northern half is the French side and the southern half is the Dutch side. And the relief efforts were very, very much, different because Sint Maarten is an independent constituent state within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So we have a certain level of autonomy. Sint Maarten is actually part of the European Union. It is a collectivité, part of France. So, what ended up happening actually is the king came to Sint Maarten before President Macron, and he saw the devastation, and he could not believe his eyes. And he really put forth an expedited relief efforts. So actually, the Dutch side received aid much faster than the French side. And there was, I think, like 600 military troops from the Dutch side, and then 500 military troops from the French side that came in, provided relief efforts with big cargo ships, even our neighboring islands that were close by, Antigua, Barbuda, which also got really hurt. We were all trying to just create, like Red Cross was involved, a lot of international organizations, just to give ground food and water. I was raising money. I was in the States. I was raising relief funds with all of my friends who were in college abroad as well. Ultimately, what ended up happening is the Netherlands has created a trust fund of 550 million euros to rebuild critical infrastructure on Sint Maarten. So the total loss and damages of the Dutch side of Sint Maarten were to the tune of $2 billion. That was the total calculated loss and damage. And then the Netherlands gave us a trust fund of 55 million euros to rebuild critical infrastructure. That was managed and is managed by the World Bank. And they've created an implementation unit to disburse those funds and create projects. And I actually work at this implementation unit. So I work on projects across the portfolio of the trust fund, rebuilding our airport, our hospitals, emergency school and home repair, fire and ambulance, our wastewater treatment facilities, critical infrastructure that really got damaged on the Dutch side. Now, the French side went through a very different system, channeling EU funds from France. And they have a more socialist government. They follow the exact same framework as France. So their distribution methods was very, very different. And due to that bureaucratic process, slower. But what ended up happening is that community groups like NGOs, local NGOs, really filled in the gaps where government wasn't able to. For example, the Sint Maarten government fell because of a vote of no confidence of our current leadership. And that led to severe governmental and political instability. So you have a time where there's a complete chaos, complete disaster, politics are unstable. Yeah. What do you do? And this is where we saw the power of people. Community groups came together, neighbors came together to share bread, milk, eggs, and kind of like go back to that bartering and trade kind of like phenomenon. And they helped helped clean each other's yards, cleared the road. Community groups and NGOs were able to access US funds, relief funds. They really filled in some major, major gaps on both sides of the island.
Sounds very inspiring and hopeful.
So
So
that was
there
very
is
beautiful.
growth. Yeah. We're gonna flip this on its head though, because we're gonna go from trust funds to protests, from one island to another group, and I'm gonna hope that we can see some similarities. Really, I'm gonna ask you to jump in when you can, but right now we're gonna focus a little bit on Nigel. Um, you're a multi-talented artist. I'm not even gonna say multi-layered, but you're also an indigenous person from an island group that I find very, very interesting. How does that collide, and how does that mix with your protestations or fighting the system?
Yeah, so I try to mix them all together. I try to mix my indigeneity, so my identity, with my creativity and my passion. And my passion is for the environment and for my people as well. So when I create and I use my perspective as an indigenous person, I create something for to raise awareness about what's currently happening around Aruba specifically, but also in the Caribbean. So um, yeah, I created multiple things in regards of yeah, just the situation that's happening in Aruba with the hotel and tourism industry. And yeah, I'm raising more awareness and making people see it from a different perspective and also feel it, because with art you express it with emotions and you express it with what's inside. And I also give it just a twist of like, yeah, just to remind people of the original people of Aruba and what we are losing with this hotel and tourism industry. So that's more or less about how I mix them all together. So yeah,
So that's how you fight the man-made climate change, by making items.
very much. Yeah. So um one way I did it was yeah, last year when I went to Aruba. Um yeah, I just did it my own way and I did graffiti all over the hotel and tourism area. I strategically did it where it's more densely populated, and I also wrote land back. So land back is like an indigenous movement of indigenous people, fighting for their land back, and I just used a very rebellious way on bringing it forward, and I mix it with art because graffiti is art essentially. It's guerrilla art.
Mm.
So yeah, that's how I mix them all together.
And were you celebrated like Banksy, or did you have to fear for your safety? Are you the next heralded PM? Like,
Well,
what's up?
I'm thinking because like okay, so it was like half half. It was 50-50 because half of the island was like, yeah, we don't want more hotels. We don't want the overgrowing of the hotel and tourism industry. We want our land back. But the other half was more stuck in the system, stuck in what they're used to, what they're comfortable with, what they like. It's the main source of economy, just like the rest of the Caribbean, the hotel and tourism industry. Aruba runs on 90% of our economy is from the hotel and tourism industry. So there was a little bit more resistance, but there was a lot of support as well from the people that actually want change, because people are starting to feel, you know, the unsustainable practices that's happening with this tourism and hotel industry. So yeah, it was 50-50. It was 50-50, but yeah, I got the face of like, the movement, and also I was labeled as a criminal as well, which yeah, we could talk about in a bit. But it was very much uh, uh, uh,
You say that so
choleric.
easily, though. Like, I don't think many people can just say, like, yeah, they called me a criminal, and we can talk about that another time. But because that's some
Yeah, this
striking.
is my mugshot. This is my
Sorry that I'm
mugshot.
laughing.
This is when I was arrested for graffitiing no more hotels and land back all over Aruba. Um, Mind you, I turned myself in. And I confessed after 6 hours of interrogation. And
Okay.
after that, I was supposed to be sent free, but they kept me in jail. They put me in jail, arrested me illegally, um, because I was causing a lot of, you know, I was not stepping on toes. I was kicking people's ankles, and I was touching everyone's wound about the unsustainable hotel and tourism industry. So that's when I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. Turns out they made my case a national priority to arrest me because I graffitied no more hotels and land back all over Aruba. So I stand accountable for what I did. I know I did it is because I wanted to create awareness about our current situation. Um, and I also want to wake my people up about the serious land loss that we are facing in Aruba and all the other effects that the hotel and tourism industry is creating on Aruba.
You say wake up, because I'm not even gonna give you a chance to like sit down, smooth criminal. Why? I had to make the reference. It was there, but how do you? How do you pull this community forward and move onwards if you're trying to wake them up? Are they asleep? Are they further working for them? Are they
Yeah,
also hearing
so
ringtones?
it's a bit of a difficult task because majority of people work in the hotel and tourism industry. So if you're fighting something that you're working in,
Hmm.
it's very counterintuitive. It's like, why am I targeting the same people that give me my bread at the end of the day? But I just have to like before I go into this question, I just have to remind people that it used to work. It used to work back in the 60s when we all started this like hotel and tourism industry on Aruba. We put like one or two low-rise hotels back then. We got our money. As you can see, that's the first hotel that we had on Aruba. So back then in the 60s, it used to work. It used to work. You know, we had our money, but then the next generation had high-rise hotels. It's like, okay, there's gonna be a few more. My generation started getting all-inclusive hotels. The next generation, so Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they started getting condominiums. So we're constantly pushing the boundaries and the baseline of what we're doing, and it's becoming more unsustainable, and it's evolving to a point where we're compromising the need of our future. So the social systems and the ecological systems. Now, this is where I will answer your question: how to bring people forward. You have to remind them that their livelihood is at stake as well. A lot of things are coming from this industry that we don't want anymore. So we're getting a lot of pollution, we're getting land loss, we're getting a lot of like ecosystems collapse. And I have to remind people that yes, all these things we are experiencing, it's gonna get worse for the future. So you have to remind people that, okay, right now you're seeing it as it is. It's happening. It's already happening. We're already losing a lot of land. We're already losing a lot of animals and native species, but it's gonna get worse. So that's when you start to wake people up. Like you wake people up, be like, hey, it's gonna affect you at the end of the day. It's already affecting majority of Arubans because, for example, like with systems collapse, because we're building so many hotels, all the energy goes to the hotel strip. So it just goes to the hotel area. And it wastes a lot of energy, you know. And in Aruba right now, we experience like 28 power outages in 26 consecutive days. It's still happening today. And they're
In
telling
St.
us
Martin as well. In St. Martin as
it's
well, we're having this huge demand and influx of tourists because of construction and like that. And now we cannot, we have too much energy demand to actually maintain with our infrastructure. And so local populations are experiencing blackouts all the time. So I just wanted to chime in and say it's a
Missed your
common
voice.
it's a common issue right now.
yeah, and it's happening more and more around the Caribbean in general. So in Aruba, like in 26 consecutive days, it's still happening today. My power could just go out any second now, and it's goodbye, Nigel, and it just really has to
No,
keep going with the
please
conversation.
stay.
But but like
Please stay,
to
Nigel. Please
highlight
do. But wow, now you're
to
getting me to say
highlight
that. But I
this,
mean,
it's
there's
like
brownouts and blackouts. I'm assuming, and like this is an issue as well. So since we do have you for this minor moment, what would be your call to action? What would be your way to grab this resilience and stir forward? Because that is something that you're doing as a leader. Except
Mhm.
Not everyone knows about that. So tell us more before you.
Yeah, so it's again, it's what Reddy mentioned, is the people power. People have the power to change the system. It's like, yes, we put certain people in power to manage how the island is going to be run, but the people that put them in power are the actual people that have the power. So with this, it's community building. You're creating a community of people that also face the same thing. They're also experiencing, you know, power outages on a daily basis, or they're constantly fishing in areas where there's pollution going straight into the ocean and their livelihoods are affected. So you just bring them together and be like, hey, do you also feel this pain? Shall we demand for a future that we don't want to see for the next generation? Do we see a vision, a collective vision that we all want to go towards? And that's when I started creating more of like these protests during symbolic days. So the first one was actually on the 18th of March, where I did a protest
Hmm.
where we disrupted the speech of the prime minister, um,
As one
where a
does.
group of protesters just brought forward the attention of like, hey, we don't like how the system is going. And yeah, we brought a lot of posters that says no more hotels, or ecosystems collapse, or protecting what's sacred, all these things. And we disrupted the speech on 18th of March. 18th of March is basically the national day of Aruba. And it's like, how much more like, proud of your country would you be? You could protest on a day that's, the root of this day is a protest in itself.
Hmm.
So we're just repeating what our ancestors did. So that's another one. We also did King's Day, a protest on King's Day, to just highlight the climate racism, and also a lot of colonial systems that still remain on the island. And it's just very apparent because the hotel and tourism industry, in its essence, in its core, is very extractivism, and it's also neo-colonial. It's a new way of extracting from an island,
Yeah.
and it's creating a lot of damages as well, ecological and social damages. So as you can see over there, I was holding up a sign that says "Decolonize
Decolonize.
Aruba." 5 minutes before that, I got taken down by the cops. I don't know how, why, but apparently my constitutional rights of freedom of speech gets taken away the minute I hold a poster. But as you see, we are putting more and more pressure on our governmental bodies and people that are supposed to make these changes. So it's it's
Hmm.
it's combination of having community and also a vision for where you want to go, and bringing it together and show, hey, we are a civil society wanting change for Aruba, and you're not listening to us. You're not listening to us, and it's getting worse, and it's only going to get worse if we keep neglecting, climate justice and other social, environmental, unsustainable practices that's happening around Aruba. So
I feel like I
yeah,
heard this verbatim. I feel like I heard this
sorry.
verbatim a few, like this exact statement you just said, that we have to have a political view, we have to come together. I feel like that and cops, we got that. I heard a lot of young political activists at the COP coming together to say exactly this. Yes, we're here, but we're also protesting these exact actions. We're decolonizing this even by being here. So to flip the script again and to hear another voice, please, Nigel, don't go to the dark side. Stay here. We have cookies and pastéis, but you can't have those. Those are for y'all if you want some. But Riddhi, how was it at the COP hearing these exact same words, but then at a meso level, at a I don't know, international level even?
Yeah, so I only found out about COP after attending one of the climate justice camps in Tunisia. And that was the first time I had ever met someone from Bonaire and from Curacao. So the first time I had to go all the way to Tunisia to meet someone from Bonaire and someone from Curacao. So that just says that how disconnected we are, even though we're in the same field, we're doing the same kind of work. It took that, to meet. And there I learned about COP, and I was like, wow, I think the island should have to go to this. We got hit by Hurricane Irma. all of the islands in the Caribbean are very, very vulnerable. And then I found out how we are represented in international affairs and foreign relations. So because we are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we are represented by the European part of the kingdom. So I found out there are delegations that go to COP, and our ministers are consulted, our prime ministers are consulted, but then it stops. None of that information trickles down to public civil society, such as myself. And I don't think our governments in the Caribbean often have the capacity to read technical documents and contribute as effectively as we should. So upon reaching to my first COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, I didn't even know that the Netherlands delegation was there. And I had to find them all on my own, and I was very much, welcomed and very grateful to have met and connected with them. But I saw the immediate disconnect. So within the United Nations structure, the UNFCCC, the Netherlands is considered, or the Kingdom of the Netherlands is considered a developed country, which means within the UN Charter, we are categorized as an Annex 1 developed country. And that is the entire Kingdom of the Netherlands. Sint Maarten, Aruba, Curaçao, Saba, Statia are not developed countries. We are still very much vulnerable to the climate crisis as much as our neighbors, such as Antigua and Barbuda, Venezuela, yet they're able to represent their own voices sovereignly. Now, the position of the Netherlands and the kingdom is very difficult, right? Because the Netherlands is also within the European Union, and the European Union shows up as a block to international foreign conferences. So how can we find, our voices when, we're competing with the EU bloc? So I found, and maybe this is maybe too technical and too complicated to understand.
I'll rear you in
All
when
there
it's
is
too difficult,
to
so
say,
keep it up. Right? It's going well here. Majority says continue. Democratic, go on. Yes.
Thank you. Well, all that to say is, even if the islands were to have a position on climate change, we do not have access to the loss and damage finance fund, because the Netherlands, or the Kingdom of the Netherlands, is a donor to the fund. So you can be a recipient of funds and be a donor at the same time. And this goes for all the islands within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, cannot access any international market funds on the global market. So that is the Adaptation Fund, the GCF, the GEF, and then obviously the Historical Loss and Damage Fund, even though we're hit by crisis. So who are we reliant on? The pockets of the Netherlands, our member state. And that's not just for the Dutch islands. The British islands are also very much reliant on the UK for support, and the French islands are very much reliant on France. But, France is not going to go to COP and talk about the French side of Sint Maarten, New Caledonia, and the Pacific. They're representing nationalistic French policies in the European part of the country. Yeah. And so that was just my experience at COP. And so, going to a conference and not being able to have a voice is really hard, especially if you're very vulnerable to the situation. So the biggest gap I wrote there, I didn't see that slide, it's representation. It's local representation and local context. But let me tell you what we did about it, and that's in the next slide.
You sound happy about it, so yes. And by the way, we did adjust the slide a little bit, but I do want to shout out to someone there because I'm not sure you'll do it. But Nigel, if you see that person on the second one called Oriana, please find her and then keep protesting everything that you can, and just word back to you, Riddhi.
Sweet.
So that's so funny because I met Oriana at this a course. We all took this Caribbean Climate Justice Leaders Academy course, and I think 300 people applied, 40 people got selected, 10 got to go to COP, a fully funded opportunity to go to COP. And luckily, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, they were able to offer us accreditation to this conference. And we had the largest Dutch youth representation at COP ever from the Kaas Islands. Oriana is from Aruba, we had Muskan from Curacao, and myself from Sint Maarten. And what I realized is that the prior year I attended the conference and I was the sole, Dutch youth representative. And going together as a collective made the biggest difference. We were able to amplify each other's voices. We were able to communicate with the delegation of the Netherlands and kind of bridge that gap. Hey, how do we work together? How do we have a kingdom strategy to climate change? And what does representation look like moving forward? And so that I think was very, very promising, that youth have power, and that you can, as a collective, make a bigger difference and amplify your voices. And we did that, and we were very, very successful. I'm here today, meeting and talking with a bunch of people from the Netherlands. That is awesome.
I also like to add that I got selected this year for the academy as well. So yeah, it's like, right now it's more representation from
It's okay. Criminals get clapped for. That's what we do here.
So.
No, but proud. Awesome.
Yeah, and I think there's another slide towards the end. I don't know.
I don't have the
I don't know if we have any time, but it all to say that young people just have a lot of power, and we talked, yes, intergenerational equity, exactly. The whole point of it all, what I learned was, there were so many young people fighting for this, that decisions made today directly affect our futures. And therefore, the concept of intergenerational equity is at the premise of the climate crisis, because we all have the right to clean air, clean water, and a livable environment. So, yeah.
I feel like repeating the same statement from earlier. But before we move on, you for president, FYI, and VP over there. Before we go to the Q&A to the crowd, I actually do want to ask this to both of you. So you both are on other sides, not just island-wise looking at the different waters, not just at the different levels of advocacy or activism, etc. What advice would you give to the other side? What experience would you want to share to be able to say, if I could brainchild you and just give you one step, what would it be? What place would it be? And since you were just talking, Riddhi, I'll ask Nigel first. Or if you're faster at that, you may jump into. But I see Nigel.
And I say everyone's an activist in their own way. Everyone could be an activist in their way. Whether it's you're just someone that votes and stands for justice and peace and all these things, or you're someone that works within the system. You're a politician or a legal officer or someone in there, or you're, as like me, much more of a rebellious activist that go out in the street, or you're from a grassroots movement, you're working within the community. You could make change in your own way. You could stand for climate justice and be a climate activist in your own way. You don't have to go out in the streets or be in a higher up position in an organization. You could be grassroots movement. You could be a representative in the youth. So everyone has their own way and their own role within the system to change it from within. And it's up to everyone to find their own niche in where they want to do this and how they want to do this as well. And find your community. For example, me and Riddhi works more for she attends these conferences. She talks to delegates. She talks to people that could change. I am much more of someone that goes out in the street and protests and puts social pressure on people. So that's how I want to highlight it, that
and if I give 50 seconds to Riddhi, so she can add her last 50 seconds to that too, how would that be? 40 going now?
Yeah, so all I would say is I would build off of Nigel's point, basically stating that, there's a lot of activism happening around climate change in the Netherlands. At COP, I met several NGOs, youth representatives that were Dutch, that were fighting for, climate change rights in the Netherlands. But what I felt was very left out of that dialogue. And my message to the people on the other side is that you are part of a kingdom. And so we're here, we would love to work together to have one main message. Let's amplify our voices. Like I said, I keep iterating this, and I'm hoping it catches on as some slogan. Climate change is a kingdom issue. Let's champion this issue together, because we are all facing the same crisis, and I think we will get a lot farther working together. So that would be, like when you go and campaign, please remember your island counterparts. So yeah, that would be it.
Then let's bring the kingdom together right now. For the people online that want to ask questions, you had the Mentimeter earlier, but for the people in the crowd, this is the part where you have the Q&A. You will not be speaking to me because I'm just a moderator here, like as awesome as it is. But we have two people with microphones. They can come to you in the crowd if you have a question, and that can actually come up. As you're thinking about it, though, I'm going to ask one that came directly from the Mentimeter, and then maybe if there's someone here, we can point them out. So the first question that came from online: has advocacy specifically helped in advancing climate resilience efforts in Sint Maarten? So I think, Riddhi, this is for you. Do I need to repeat it again? I cannot read lips, but I think you just said, can you repeat that again?
Yes.
And I'm going to say yes. Has advocacy specifically helped in advancing climate resilience efforts in Sint Maarten?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Advocacy has definitely made a big difference. We've seen civil society organizations take the baton on their own and apply for grants, any EU grants that we are eligible for, and create projects, awareness campaigns. It is not enough, but it is a start, and we are getting there. You would think that a Category 5 hurricane would be enough of a wake-up call, but alas. We need some more fire under some bottoms. Anyways.
It does take a lot to shake up people. That is definitely true. That is definitely true. I see two questions here in the crowd. Actually, I don't see it, but...
Hello.
Yes?
Yeah, here I am.
Thank you.
You cannot see me, but I can see you.
Hello to you, stranger. Please pose your question.
Yeah, my question is, I spoke to, some people from Sint Maarten, and they were quite critical, actually, of the Dutch government and their response to Hurricane Irma, for example, by saying that the Dutch aid came with a lot of strings attached, which was against a sore point, of course, in this history of colonialism that we have. I also heard stories of elderly people, who after 7 years, like with their home destroyed, were still living in deplorable conditions. So I wonder what your reflections is on that, if that is true, or, because I didn't really, hear that side from the story that you were telling. So I was curious about your viewpoints on that.
Well, I also decided to be a little bit PC and state facts as they are, without, staying as neutral as possible. But in that vein, Sint Maarten, as a new country within the kingdom, has had its fair share of political instability and corruption. That is something that is just, a mere fact. In fact, just the other day, government fell because of, political instability. So it's not that we've demonstrated, a very strong track record of, great use of funds that has come from the Netherlands. So I can totally understand the conditions that were placed because of distrust. And this was no small sum. This is almost €500 million we're talking about. So the conditions were that the World Bank will be the intermediary to disburse the funds once projects are approved. Now, the conditions put on by the World Bank for a small island were very, very, very large. And so that's where the criticism came, I think, from the Netherlands, because there was no flexibility. You had to follow World Bank standards and frameworks. And if you didn't, the funds would not be available. So we saw and met a lot of challenges there with the implementation of projects, trying to meet these very high international standards when we're still, a small island nation with very limited capacity, limited training. And so we saw a lot of delays in that process. And so I think with regards to flexibility from the Netherlands in terms of understanding the small island nature, I think that could have been delivered better. And in terms of, and because of these long bureaucratic procedures, indeed, you are still seeing aid not being delivered to the most vulnerable people. And that is just a fact of the process. If we were to do it again, would we go through the same means? I'm not too sure. I think St. Maarten needs to also clean up its own act. We also need to demonstrate, our willingness to cooperate, our willingness to adhere to rules, and demonstrate our independence as a more mature country. So I think it's there is a lot of colonialism that is neo-colonialism that still is very, very present. But at the same time, we also need to work better. So I would say it's really like two sides of a coin. And now I think there's the most cooperation ever amongst all the islands in the Netherlands. Now with the new government, we don't know how that relationship is going to be. So that will be very interesting.
Would you like to follow that up, or was that sufficient for you? I see you. No? Then, other stranger I cannot see in the dark.
Hi. So I'm actually working on for the Ministry of Tourism. Don't kill me, Nigel. It's actually aligned to what you do. I work with the Ministry of Tourism in St. Kitts currently to develop the climate action plan for the island. And what's been really interesting about the process is that, now we've measured the carbon impact of tourism. So like, actually, what is the impact the island is absorbing? The cruise ships are pushing for shore power when the island itself needs 5 megawatt of renewable energy, which is too small to be financed. But a cruise ship needs a 45 megawatt shore power plant. So there are these big imbalances that happen within the Caribbean. And one of the challenges, the island wants to ban single-use plastic, but now the cost of importation of all of these sustainable resources, the food security situation, water scarcity, it's so expensive for the small islands. So one of the questions that we're looking at, and I've started to raise the conversation actually with some friends in the Dutch Caribbean, is, well, what if the islands work together and we build that local entrepreneurship for climate change solutions on island, in island, to come from the island to help solve these challenges of always having to import the knowledge and the resources as part of this decolonization, and also showing the climate leadership, which is being shown by many islands, but then, they're having this resource issue. So this investment in the youth and entrepreneurship.
So is that a suggestion or
well,
a
I was just wondering if you're seeing, because I've been looking at climate change entrepreneurship, that investment in the youth, and whether you've been seeing it in the Dutch Caribbean or if you think there's a need for that across the region.
Panelists?
Yeah, no, to echo what you just said as well, it's like, yes, we could learn from each other regionally how we are all dealing with this, because we're all dealing with it in a specific way. So, for example, you mentioned the thing about the cruise ships coming in. It's causing a lot of pressure on our infrastructures, whether it's waste or energy or anything else. Or, for example, the banning of single-use plastic. It's a tough challenge, because then we have to find another solution on how to do this. Well, like you said, we can look around us, look at our community, the Caribbean islands, to see how they have handled it, because maybe they found a solution in their own local context, and maybe we could apply it to our context too. So, yeah, I would also say it's like, to try to be sustainable in this sense, you have to find what is not sustainable within the system, what is not working, what is an error within the system, and trying to change it from within. And also try to see, how do we collaborate with regional islands to see how can we fix this problem. So, for example, maybe St. Kitts has a way to deal with, I don't know, jet skis that are coming in the island constantly and damaging the coral reefs, or whatever. Any example. Maybe Aruba could learn from this. Maybe Aruba could learn, hey, okay, we could adapt it because St. Kitts is doing it. We could build a collaboration. Or, like you said, with the thing about the infrastructure, or the importation, or finding solutions. Maybe Aruba has a solution and St. Kitts doesn't have the solution, but maybe if we could build that network and try to see how do we collectively solve this issue, because we all are on the same boat. We're all facing the same things, similar things within the Caribbean islands. How do we solve it? How do we solve it together? And how do we help each other solve it? So
Yeah.
I don't know if Ricky wants to say something.
Yes. Go,
Yeah,
Riddhi.
absolutely. And yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of Nigel, I think that the biggest barrier for the Dutch Caribbean to work with the rest of the region definitely is our constitutional status. You know, we are not formally part of CARICOM as other sovereign islands within the Caribbean are, and that really limits our ability to trade and have agreements with one another. And I think that has been our biggest barrier to entry, because I know the CARICOM bloc are looking at regional energy sources, regional agricultural trade sources to reduce dependencies on importation. Now, the problem that I've specifically faced in St. Martin is that, you know, our distribution companies make a lot of money with the brands that they import. So by limiting single-use plastics at the importation level is single-handedly cutting off huge revenues from these big distribution companies. So then how do you come to like this win-win scenario? And indeed, what you're proposing is this investment in entrepreneurship where there is kind of this substitute revenue stream where, you know, companies, I don't know whether the pitch is corporate social responsibility or, you know, reputational brand management. Oh, you know, if you go to this, like, for example, one of the biggest found pieces of garbage on St. Martin littered are Heineken bottles, glass Heineken bottles. And this is not just in St. Martin, this is across all the Dutch Caribbean islands. We drink a lot of Heineken because we party a lot. But, you know, it's like Heineken has a huge sustainability arm. Why? And it's just too expensive to ship all of the recycled Heineken bottles back to the Netherlands. So one idea indeed is to have kind of this regional recycling hub. But who's going to pay, you know, the upfront costs? Where are the investments going to come from? And I think that's when it becomes a really wicked problem. And I think my advice would be to plug into those regional networks like CARICOM to see what they're doing so that you can get plugged in and replicate that. I don't know if you've already done that, but.
Then we're going to use that to segue from Heineken and partying to, well, our intermezzo. We have a comedian here. His name is Sjoerd. Ik ga het even op zijn Hollands zeggen. We hebben Sjoerd hier aanwezig. But don't let the name fool you. He also has some good jokes to tell. So I'll be here after the intermezzo, and I'll continue telling jokes too. But for now, please don't walk away. The entertainment's on its way.
Oh, nice. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. I guess that's me. Cool. Cool. First of all, can we all make some noise for our moderator, everybody, please? Amazing. Thank you. Really well done. I was told to stand right here, so that's what I'm going to do. Thank you guys so much for coming. This is so dope. I'm actually from St. Martin, so this entire panel has been amazing. I've loved every part of this, and thank you guys so much for coming out and supporting this. Please make some noise for yourselves, please. I think this is actually really dope. It's really dope. It is. It is. It is. I also think it's a great transition to comedy. This is dope. I absolutely love it. It's like, yeah, by the way, St. Martin falling apart and completely in debt. Please welcome Sjoerd Scott. I'm like, yeah. Thank you. This is awesome. I love it. I love representing my country. It's cool. But I mean, like, it's one of those things that I think is really cool. Like, I can't, like, deny it because, you know, like, yeah, we do go through a lot of tragedy in the Caribbean. It's true. A lot of things keep happening to us, and we're very patient, even though we can sometimes be impatient. We're very patient with all the things that happen to us. And one thing I've learned is we've always learned to laugh during all of these tragedies, like hurricanes, blackouts, from the electricity, from GB. We talk about it all the time. We joke about it on Facebook. Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I could see that my fellow St. Martiner is also nodding at this. She knows what I'm talking about, right? It's very real, and it's one of those things that I've always noticed. I like to talk about these kind of identity and like all of these stories that I experience, whether it's in the Netherlands or in the Caribbean, as a form of activism, you know? Like, I feel like it also helps me laugh about these things and share these stories and perspectives, right? Like when I came here to the Netherlands, like I'll tell you guys this, you guys heard my name. My name is Sjoerd. And one thing about Sjoerds in the Netherlands is that typically they don't come in this color. I'm aware, right? I'm aware, right? Because the whole thing about that is my mom dated a Dutch guy named Sjoerd once, thought he was so smart, so confident, so funny, so tall and good looking. I'm gonna name my son after him so he can be just like Sjoerd, which is a good idea, except Sjoerd is not my father, so it's kind of messed up. I don't know who names their kid after their ex and think that's cool. My mom thought it was, right? And it's one of those things because, like, you know, and I like to talk about these things. Like, I remember I was at a show in Rotterdam, and I asked the audience, I was like, hey, do you guys think that there is discrimination in the Netherlands, right? A lot of them said yes, and then this one lady yelled out, no, there isn't. And I would know that because I'm from France. I was like, well, thank you, France. I don't know what that had to do with anything. Right? And it's true, though, because I would tell you this, though, like, I will admit, in France, it's truly terrible, and here it happens just as much, and I know it does, because I saw it happen in front of me, this discrimination, right? I had to go from one show to the next, so I called an Uber. I was in Amsterdam, Bijlmer. I called an Uber. I got picked up by this guy named Jafar. I got nervous. Don't worry about it. He's not here. Right? By Jafar, right? Jafar picks me up, and he starts talking to me while he's driving. He's like, yo, bro, where you from? It's like, oh, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Sint Maarten. Where you from? He goes, oh, I'm from Morocco. As soon as he said that, whoop, whoop, we got pulled over. I wish I was making this up. It's like they were waiting for it. Like it was right on cue, right? And Jafar, let me tell you guys this about Jafar. Jafar, young Moroccan guy, maybe 22, 23 years old, just like me, right? He pulls over the car, he looks back at me and goes, don't worry, I got this. I'm like, hell yeah, this child is gonna get me out of this. This is gonna be great, right? The cop comes up to Jafar's door, knocks on the glass and says, sir, can you please step out of the vehicle? Jafar looks at the Dutch officer and goes, no, it's cold. I wish I was making this up. I wish I was making this up. I'm like, yo, Jafar, get out of the car. He looks back at me and goes, don't worry, I got this. He taps the seat next to him, looks at the cop and goes, why don't you sit next to me? He's trying to passenger princess the cop now. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this, right? The cop understandably gets upset. He says, sir, I'm not playing with you, opens his door. Jafar gets mad, slams his door back. They open it and slam it back and forth for like a little bit, and you have to excuse my language. It's the true story. That's exactly what Jafar said. Jafar slammed his door for the 7th time and said, fuck you, pannenkoek. Now, let me tell you guys this. I know pannenkoek means pancake, but I've never heard it used like this before. Let me tell you that. If I know it could be used like this, I would have used it more often. I thought it was cute. I was like, yeah, pancake, why don't you sit next to him? What's your problem? What's the issue, right? And the cop, I can't make this up. Like, I had no idea this was the worst thing to call a Dutch officer. The way he reacted was so disproportionate. He was like, yeah, pannenkoek. He went on his walkie-talkie, and I can't make this up, 9 police vans pulled up. 9. 15 officers surrounded the car, right? I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, they got us, right? This is the worst. That's what I was thinking, right? He was so calm about it. Jafar didn't care. He looked back at me and he was making jokes. He was like, I know this looks bad. And he goes, with a straight face, he goes, but don't worry, we're in this together. I'm like, no, I don't want that, right? I don't want any part of this, right? I wish I was making this whole thing up. And he starts to make jokes with me. He goes, maybe if you tell them your name is Sjoerd, they'll make some jokes about your name being Dutch and you not being white. They'll laugh about it, and then they're going to let us go. I'm thinking he's crazy, right? I step out the car. I'm getting nervous. I give my ID to the cop. He looks at it. He goes, your name is Sjoerd? I said, yeah. He goes, no. Yo, Sjoerd. And they had a Sjoerd that worked there. And he was like, do you know this guy? Like, all Sjoerds knew each other. And Sjoerd, I can't make this up, comes up to me and goes, oh my God, we come in black? I didn't know. joking about this for like 15 minutes. I'm laughing. I think this is hysterical. At some point, the cops, after 15 minutes, they go, you know what? You guys are cool. You're free to go. Get out of here. And they let us go just like Jafar said, right? Just like he said. I'm in the car. I'm feeling hysterical. I was nervous. I was scared. I felt everything. I'm panicking. I said to Jafar, I was like, bro, how did you know we were going to get out of that? How did you know we weren't going to get fucked up? He goes, bro, I would never fuck you up. Do you know why? I said, why? He goes, because we're both from Africa. And that's the discrimination I'm talking about. I can't do it. It's 2024. It's not just... We can't keep doing it, but I give him a 5-star review. I have to go to another show. Thank you guys so much for having me. This was fun. I got to get out of here. Moderator. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm from Africa too. You from Africa too? You from Africa too? I think we're all from the motherland, huh? No, I have my own stalker. It's okay. Not a joke. Or is it? Now, if you want more information about that, look me up, but it's not about me today. We're going to continue onwards. Panelists online, we are going to add our panelists that are physically here as well to it. For the people that every now and then think they need a bio break, don't look at me to give you the possibility to do that, just between you and your gods and your biological needs. But for the other panelists that are not here yet, may I ask you to step up, please? Come out from the darkness. I can't see anything beyond this ring. Chermer's the only one I see. And a round of applause to have them here, please. We have Danique Emiralny, and since I always say these names wrong and I want to hear someone introduce themselves.
Yes.
Danique, could you please introduce thyself?
Hi, good night. I'm Danique Martis. Sorry, I'm a little slow tonight.
I'm fast, I'm sorry. I can slow it down. Danique Martis, you're a very inspiring person. You've done a lot for Greenpeace. You have a company around social octopuses? I'll let her do it better. I'm sorry. I just thought I'd make them smile.
Yes.
Back to you.
My company is actually called the Social Octopus, and what we do is, apart from my social work background, I also am able to express myself in my many talents as a baker and a bartender. Next to that, I work as a community mobilizer for Greenpeace, and I was raised on Bonaire, Curacao, and St. Eustatius. That came out in the wrong order. I was born on Curacao, raised on St. Eustatius and Bonaire. But your introduction kind of threw me off, so I'm working with what I have, and the lights are very bright.
Right, so you didn't start on the bottom, but you're here, you know?
So everything is a bit so funny. It's a bit extra. So I got my love for nature also from where I was raised on St. Eustatius. The nature is beautiful and it is resilient also. I've heard Riddhi talk about the hurricanes, and I've lived on Eustatius, so I've been through them, and I've seen the nature pop up back from being decimated also after Irma, because I was actually there when that happened. I was stuck there, couldn't travel to the Netherlands when I wanted to. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome, I like that. Pen dropping, right? People get me. Morality, we already had a very good connection before this, and you know I already see you smiling. I think you're ready for it yourself, right? You can do it. You can do it.
I get introduced at work as the sunshine of the office.
Then sunshine in the Pakhuis des Weiger. Shine light upon us like these lights, and introduce thyself.
No, my name is Meralny Bomba. I'm more known as Nani, and I am born in Bonaire and raised in Bonaire. Lived my whole life in Bonaire. Pure Bonairean girl right here. So, and I'm now currently in the Netherlands. I am a community mobilizer and organizer for Greenpeace Netherlands, but based in Bonaire. So I do the work on Bonaire. And apart from the work I do for Greenpeace, I'm also a business owner. I own my own business. Yes, proudly. And I'm also an inspiring fitness influencer on the island of Bonaire. Yeah, I do a lot. That's a little bit of what I do. Thanks, Riddhi.
Okay, now I'm going to be. There's an intro video, right?
I think that the Dutch government.
There was an intro video that was supposed to play right after this. I'm sorry.
I think that the Dutch government sees Bonaire as a little small dorpje. It concerns me that it doesn't get the proper recognition and care that it needs. I'm Dr. Jay Havisser. I've been archaeologist for the Netherlands Islands for 40 years. Bonaire is one of the last bastions of a natural, more pristine type of Caribbean life. Not just the environment, but the people as well, too. I worry about climate change. I think we are underestimating how rapidly these changes can occur. Here on Bonaire, we are a small-scale society. They're so closely tied to the environment. Bonairean culture actually is fundamentally based on the relationship with the sea. Once the sea starts changing and the environment and the coastline start changing, that's going to impact not just their general lives, but their whole life ways. And then we will have lost a true gem of understanding Caribbean people. You have the famous slave houses, and these were work sheds for the enslaved peoples who worked in the salt pans. Clearly, things like the lighthouse, that's going to be impacted. There are areas where maybe we can work out systems to control the coastline. The Netherlands is famous for this. Why not use technology and awareness that they already have in the Netherlands and try to find ways to apply it here? If we don't look for ways of working together, we're not going to have as positive a future. So that is essential, figuring out a way for the Netherlands and the Bonairean people to balance that scientific approach with community engagement. And there's where you'll find a successful and sustainable future.
Thanks, Nigel.
Just wanted to say that Jay lives on Sint Maarten, and he was one of my mentors growing up. So it was really, really awesome to see him do this little snapshot of Bonaire. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'm taken aback. I haven't seen Bonaire in, I think, at least 10 years. And it is gorgeous to see in video. So my family comes from Bonaire as well. So I'm going to let y'all talk to me about how's Greenpeace doing there? How's community building going? And we're going to keep the conversation a little lighter than then. So if you're a criminal as well, it's okay. Tell us. If you're all about the advocacy or the business money. But what I mean rather is both of you can answer the questions. We'll go back and forth. At some point, I'll ask the panelists online also to join. But for now, Bonaire at the forefront.
What was your question?
Greenpeace. How did you mobilize the community on your island, and also what effect had it?
So I can start if you want. So Greenpeace started in Bonaire like about 2 years ago, or a little bit more before 2 years ago, that we started based with the research that we did on the island to see what the community thinks about Greenpeace being on the island, about what they think about the climate change and the work that Greenpeace would come and do on Bonaire. And then based on that research, they figured out that yes, Bonaire wants Greenpeace on the island to help. And so that's how Greenpeace got there. Really short explanation, but you can find more information later after this session. We don't have a lot of time, but to go really quickly through it.
You don't have to go that quickly through it.
No, but
there's people here that are really interested in finding out what the effects have been and how they've been experienced. So if you can delve a little bit and speed up whenever you want, but not yet.
Okay, so that's how we Greenpeace got on the island, and then we started working with the community in the sense of having community mobilizer on the island to like inform, do different activities on the island to inform the community the work that we are doing on the island, because the campaign that Greenpeace is doing is actually a court case that we are already in against the Dutch government. We sued the Dutch government. I should say that really loud. we did. Very proudly to say that. And so we are now currently on the island informing and doing a lot of events and activities to inform the people about that, the community, let's say. And also Greenpeace, together with 8 plaintiffs, are doing this court case, the taking. So it's Bonaire together with Greenpeace that's doing this court case against the Dutch government. And
what are they suing for? Because, I mean, although I'm madly informed about this and was there in The Hague when we handed it in,
yes.
How about the rest of the people?
Yes, we're suing the Dutch government. I can let Danique explain that.
Why are we
You're good into that.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, so the reason actually why we're suing the Dutch government is because for a lot of us that have lived on the islands, and for those that still live on the islands, you realize that they have the responsibility to take care of the island as they would a municipality here in the European Netherlands. However, they're not doing it in the same manner. And what happens is it creates the sense of being a second-class citizen, which actually we're not supposed to be. And the issue being actually that when Greenpeace commissioned the Vrije Universiteit to do their research on what are the impacts of climate change for Bonaire, they they discovered that because of the low-lying land of Bonaire, we are actually at risk of losing parts of our island. We are at risk of more heat, more drought, extreme weather events. Opposite to more drought, we are also experiencing extreme rain events where instead of having a consistent rainy season, you have a few days of extremely heavy rain, which Bonaire cannot support because of the current infrastructure. So based on these things, it was decided that we would go into conversation with the Dutch government to see how actually we can push them to take their responsibility and take care of Bonaire, create more adaptation possibilities for Bonaire, and also mitigate in the European Netherlands in order to combat climate change. And right now, 2 of our demands for the Dutch government is, number 1, create an adaptation plan to protect Bonaire against the effect of climate change. And they have to do that together with the people of Bonaire, of course, based on research, definitely. But you also have to take into account the communities that live on the island. And the second demand that we have is that they also mitigate here in the European part of the Netherlands. That being because not just for Bonaire and the Caribbean islands, but for the world, actually, it's important that the Dutch government takes their part, their responsibility, and reduces their CO2 emissions as soon as possible to avoid us going over 1.5 degrees of global warming. And that is something that you won't achieve on Bonaire just by mitigating on the island. You would have to do that from the European Netherlands. So I hope that answers your question.
That is one of the most cohesive answers I've ever given. Sorry, ever heard. I just put myself there. I was like, oh my God, that's such a good speaker.
Yeah, that's why I gave it to her.
You did, right?
She's the person who answers that question specifically. Yes.
For the people that don't know it, though, because there is a different structure system in the way the islands are treated within the kingdom, there is a difference and an overlap with Sint Maarten, but also with Bonaire. So they are treated differently. Bonaire is part of the Netherlands as we know it. Part of Zeeland, if I'm correct?
Bonaire, Seba Station.
Yeah, but that's part of Zeeland now, right? Like part of the Netherlands, really, right? Are you like the Zeeland? No, what part are you now?
No, so...
See, this is how you spread this information, and then you ask people to be more specific about it, and this is how you inspire them. This is called hint, hint.
Yeah, so I think earlier there was, it's behind me again.
It is.
There is the construction of how the Dutch kingdom is now divided into, you have the 4 countries, you have Aruba, Curacao, the Netherlands, and St. Maarten. And under the Netherlands, you have special municipalities, which are now Bonaire, Sint Eustatius, and Saba, which have a more direct link with the Dutch government. In Dutch, it is een speciale gemeente. Bijzondere gemeente.
Bijzonder mooi. But the reason why I was asking for you to
That is
highlight
true.
that was because then you're asking for actually the same privileges as any other Dutch citizen. Is that one of the...
As any other Dutch municipality.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Because you are.
We do have the same. We do have the right to a livable island, to a safe space to live. I know we're not the same as the Netherlands. We are an island. We're surrounded by ocean, so that's why we are exactly. That's why we are demanding that together with the people of the island, we think of a plan, adaptation plan, because in the Netherlands they have a different dijken and stuff like that. But we don't want no dike in Bonaire. Like this stuff. We don't want no dike, just so you know. So we want different stuff, and together with the people, then we want them to make a nice plan, so we are also protected and have the same protective rights.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in really for those that are probably online listening that may not really understand the terminologies adaptation and mitigation. When we speak of adaptation, we're thinking about how to make Bonaire and the rest of the islands climate resilient. So how do you adapt your island in such a way that despite the heavy rains and the extra drought, that your island is still protected against climate change? So you adapt in a certain way. You, for example, build deeper dams or the salinas. We have them. They're the ponds.
Yeah.
The ponds. Yeah. You would deepen your ponds so that when there is excess rain, there is enough space to for the water to go. And when you talk about mitigation, you're talking about stopping or reducing the climate change itself. So for the European part of the Netherlands, that would mean cutting down the amount of CO2 emissions that they are emitting currently. And that's the difference between adaptation and mitigation.
I get why y'all work together. Riddhi, I saw your hand go up. Was that because you wanted to add something? Then I'm going to see if they can let you go for it.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is that what is so amazing about this case, and I'm so proud of I think Nigel and I, all of us, we're so proud of Bonaire taking a stance and like shining light to this issue of, inequality in many cases. Because just like, while our territories do not have the same statuses, we are all equal Dutch citizens as well. And I think that's a really great point to bring up. And following that, what Bonaire is doing is setting a precedent for the rest of the islands to also get, work being done in regards to working in context, in hand, in tandem with the local populations to create a national adaptation plan for the rest of the island. So I think that we're very proud of and we stand with Bonaire in this case, and like I said, it just highlights the issue in a more strategic, litigious way and sets the precedent for the rest of us.
Yes, that's the main goal also, together.
You're getting a lot of praise, and it already raises the question that I wanted to actually ask. How is the international perception of this? How is the support flooding in? How? Could you go deeper into this case internationally?
Internationally, or
but also how these organizations are working together, how you're inspiring youths from all over. I mean, I've heard there's a 10-year difference between us, and at 25, I did not do half of what you've done.
No, we are getting a lot of support internationally and locally. I could say locally in the beginning, because like I said, Greenpeace was here like about 2 years ago already. It was very difficult to get the support of the locals, because the topic climate change and climate justice, people were like, what? They were not really like knowing what we're talking about, so they were like, whatever. And by now, I can really clearly see a difference in the awareness of the people. And like 2 years ago, I would walk and say, hi, I work for Greenpeace. They would be like, what? Who? And what is that? And now they're like, they see me coming, Greenpeace. I'm like, oh, yes, I'm fighting for our island. So they are really getting more aware and more informative, more into it. There's still a lot more work to be done, though. But I can see the support. also internationally, you can also see the support in the sense that we last did a manifestation in February, and we got all the way into the Guardian newspaper. So we get those kind of support also in newspapers and radio interviews and TV interviews from here, also from the Netherlands. So I feel the support, and it's growing more and more and more. I don't know if you want to add on to that.
Yeah, so to add on to what Meralni said, I think for context, she mentioned that in the beginning it was kind of hard to get the people with us. And that's not because people on Bonaire don't think this is an important something. It's actually because whereas here in the Netherlands, people are bombarded with climate change, global warming, you have to recycle your products, your plastics, your cardboards, and everything. On Bonaire, this is very much not the case. Mm-hmm. No one is talking about it. And you can't blame them either, because they're worried about their other social economic issues, like poverty that's on the island. They're a lot more worried about what are we going to eat tomorrow, rather than something that they've actually never really heard about from the governing parties. And so because of that, it was very difficult to get people to understand the complexity of climate change, and also to understand the intersectionality between climate change and their social issues that they're going through, and how climate change will amplify what they're going through also. And if you look at our support, we were lucky enough to be able to join the climate justice camp on Sint Maarten, and you realize how those of our other Caribbean counterparts are also very interested in what we are doing, and not just interested in a matter of, oh my gosh, this is amazing, but also interested in trying to understand how we went about making our court case and went about the research and everything, so that they can also see what is possible on their prospective islands to possibly also do something similar, or how we can work together. So I think in Sint Maarten, for me especially, I felt, unfortunately, that everyone had a lot of the same issues that we had, that their, let's call it for now, for lack of a better word, their motherland is not doing their part, and their human rights are not being given to them the way it should be. And it's unfortunate. And I also saw that how everyone is still, despite that, working very hard to understand what we're doing and how they can also be a part of it going forward. So I think the support, especially from the other Caribbean islands, for me is very much appreciated.
Something that we don't very often talk about is the support systems within activism that one island can inspire another. And what I found intriguing, and sorry that it got too loud, is that I got a message from Oriana as this activity was going on, and it was saying, I feel like I'm on camp. And not in the sense of just saying those words, but you can hear it. It says, there's my brothers, there's my sisters, they're my peoples that identify in different ways.
Yeah,
it's
I can say that through that camp, we we formed an amazing group group of activists, organizers from the CAS and the ABC Islands, and we're in this WhatsApp group together, and you can feel the unity, the strength, the goals we want together, and we can see Nigel and Riddhi because we're all in the same group, and that camp it's gonna be awesome. Y'all gonna see what we're gonna do. Like, y'all gonna see.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the picture that is behind me right now, we didn't get all the flags on there, but we did have a representative from all the Dutch Caribbean islands in that photo.
Yeah. Really?
I just wanted to add, this is the first time, like this was my dream, right? To get youth representatives or young change makers, movement builders from all 6 islands together and the Caribbean together. And so just hearing the feedback, you know, just to see us together, I think you really cannot understand the power of people. You know, the people power when you come together and you share the same cause.
Yep.
It's a feeling and a bond like no other. So I very much feel like, yeah, this is my family. This is home to me.
Aww. You're the MC. You have to cut us. Otherwise we're gonna proceed.
I'm feeling excluded here, like I ain't part of the family.
Well, you're here now.
Well, I am also part of the case, so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't have to be in every boat. I'd rather be part of one, looking at it happen. So I have a question before we go to... Ain't she the best? Gives such good hugs.
That's me, yeah. That's me and Afia.
I know. She gives good.
We did a presentation of our...
She does give good hugs. I'm sorry. That's like...
Yes, I do give good hugs. She gives also good hugs. So we both give each other. Anyways, back to the topic.
Just for the record, I'm
for the
gonna
record,
say
for the
I agree.
Agree,
just,
right?
Just
like,
putting it out
universally there. A good hugger. Like it's just no panel.
Yeah, but that was
when
we did a presentation. We did a presentation of the case at Sint Maarten, and that was also part of the whole thing also, which, yeah, the legal song.
It's okay to be distracted by pictures. It's quite okay. The question I wanted to ask
And I just wanted to...
No, I'm going to ask a question first, Riddhi.
At this camp, actually, Nigel led a session where we figured out our roles. And we all play different roles in this. And I think that is also very beautiful. And perhaps you want to touch on that. But we're all working towards the same cause in our own different ways. Yeah. And I think that was really cool to discover.
Yeah.
That actually was the question.
Identify each and every one of us within the Dutch kingdom. Like, which role are we doing on our own island? Which role do we need or lack in? And which other island has these type of roles? So it was really good to, like, you know, draw out, use the entire room and to see with your own eyes. Okay, so someone is more of a rebel, or someone is more for the just a grassroots movement, or they're more of just a citizen. So it was a really nice moment to get together with the Dutch Caribbean islands and to see how are we working and what are our roles within the system. So
Yeah. And I quickly want to give a shout out to Keld. He's behind the curtain and he's manning the stage, but he has been a really big part of bringing us together as well. And look, that's the 3 of us together. And it was really awesome just meeting like-minded people who share the same feelings and want to do something about it. So Keld,
let's do something about that then. Let's bring him into the spotlight instead of keeping him back there. Not the picture. That's not enough. I see you over there. Don't hide. I see your elbow. Keep moving, Keld. I know you can hear me. We're in the same room.
I'm just going to add that Keld is also one of the plaintiffs in the Bonaire court case.
Yeah,
together with
Let's get a handshake.
That's okay.
And before I pass the word to you, remember you can ask questions in the Mentimeter. I mean to say that, and I meant to say it back to you.
So
yes, I hate Mentimeter in that type of joke, but I did it.
I'm a bit with multiple hats on, so I'm not as prepared. But yeah, I would say it's one of the plaintiffs. What I found very inspiring from the camp is how I think it was mentioned before already. Like people in similar situations really looked at how they could make similar cases in their places of origin. So, for example, if you look at the relation between Puerto Rico and the U.S. It's a similar dependency relationship as the one that the Netherlands has with the islands. So then they were trying to look at what we were doing to see if there's a possibility in doing that in their own context. Next to that being that I live in the Netherlands, and it was really important for me myself, I think, to be in a space where people fight for climate under the same concerns. I feel like the climate movement here, first of all, isn't really including the islands, but then second of all, it is talking more about future issues and not about what is happening right now. So for me, it was very inspiring to see and hear and learn from people that are in the same situation as I am. And also I want to shout out to the really strong women that are pushing the movement on the islands.
Yeah.
Next time, no male moderator. Also supporting them, people everywhere. The thing is, though, what I like about the panelists that already know each other a little bit is that we kind of lead each other to questions. Really, you already kind of brought up the roles, and I was going to ask, hey, if you had to centralize to one role, what do you think you are, and what do you think you can learn most from? But now it feels repetitive, so I'm just going to ask y'all. What do we need more of in the world? Reformers? Rebels? Blow-it-uppers? SSDers? Same shit, different dayers? And I asked that selectively to you two, and then to you two online, and then after that, you might have some Q&As. So start thinking of the questions. This is that boiling moment where you get to do that. Mentimeter as well.
What do we need more of in the world? We need more of everything in the world. Every activist has their individual role to play, and likewise, every non-activist the same. We have the rebels that are really out there and pushing for change in ways that a citizen definitely will not. But likewise, you would have a reformer that will smooth talk you kind of into still going their way in a way that a rebel would never be able to do. So you need one, and you need the next, and you need the citizen that will kind of go along with the thread and kind of still convince you slowly but surely to also make the changes as necessary. So the unfortunate thing is that you kind of feel like you lose a lot of people in the mix. You have the rebels that are very bold and out there, so you kind of forget that there are citizens just doing their everyday things that are also making actually quite significant changes. But because it's so easygoing and slow going in comparison to a rebel, you don't see them as often. So my answer to that question is you need more of everything.
What the world needs now. Sunshine, what would you think? To elaborate further on that question, what do you think we need more? Sunshine, because you said sunshine.
For me, I literally do want more people that really love and care for people. Like, we have so much people, courageous, outspoken people on this road, but little people that really care to hear what we're talking about, really hear what we are fighting for, really hear what we want, what we cry about. So we need more people that really, really care and love, and are really there to work on the change that we want, and the people who really care about the people, the environment, and also the future, because that's what we're all fighting for, the future.
Everything, understanding, love, care, support, and future-proofing our world. To the panelists online, do you have something to add to it, or do you feel like you already answered that question earlier?
You want to go first, Riddhi?
Sure.
Well.
I identified myself in between a reformer. I don't know. Actually, I forgot all the names.
Can we put the slide back, please?
The slide back then. I don't know. I think we had this running joke, right? We're all one. Like, I'm a reformer, which means that I liaison with people in positions of power to lobby, on that kind of level. But, do I have rebel thoughts? Absolutely. And that was kind of like a running joke between all of us. Even the citizen, while the citizen may not be as spoken, they have rebel thoughts too. And so I think what we need more in the world, for me at least, I would like the people in the audience, the fact that you're here today, you showed up, you want to learn more about, you're curious about the rest of the kingdom. I applaud you. Thank you for being here. We need more of you, and we need you to advocate for us, because we don't always have a seat at the table. And so if you do have a seat at the table, please remember the rest of your kingdom, your counterparts. Now you know us, Danique, Moralny, Nigel and myself. I hope we've created a very strong relationship. So don't forget about us. And of course, Percy and Keld and Schumer. Shoot.
Schumer.
Shermer also.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, so when we did the exercise of putting the pieces of paper on the floor, and everyone would walk up to the ones that they lean more towards, I was the only one that was like pure rebel, and I'm like, you know what? That's a little, should I be the only one? No, but there's in every society there's those specific people needed. So we need rebels, we need citizens, we need reformers, we need change agents. Sometimes you're more fluid, sometimes you want to be something else. For example, me, you know, I have so much energy, so much mental strength, but I also want to be a change agent. So it's like, right now I'm doing the frontline nitty gritty type of stuff, but later in life, I also want to be just a change agent. I want to help my community, be grassroots movement, and I also wanna really encourage other people to like also be fluid with what they are. So someone might be a citizen, but maybe in the future they might be a reformer. So everyone has their own role, and I think people in the audience can also possibly identify themselves within those roles and be like, you know what, I am part of this movement as well. I am part of this collective, you know, journey of going for climate justice. So I think, yeah, just after doing that exercise, it really opened my eyes to see, oh, you know, there are people that want change, but they're doing it in their own way. So I'm like, I was really, really excited and motivated after I saw that. And when we created the Caribbean block, um, to see, okay, if I need more of a reformer, I could just approach someone in my network and talk to them about the how can I go about these things, or if they need advice on protests or rebel activities, they could just come to me. So yeah, I think it was just very enlightening to see my community get together, and you see the entire system and you see how they're working to create a better change. So yeah.
Thank you for all your answers.
Yeah.
Panelists, we've reached the Q&A aspect where we start with the people online because they aren't here. They can't be entertained by the smells of food wafting at you, telling you have to wait a little bit longer. But we're going to start with a sequence like this. 2 menti questions and then 1 from the crowd. Since I can't see the people in the crowd besides the ones right in front of me, we'll have 2 people in the back walking with the microphones. I'll read one of the questions out loud, and you're going to hear from the question, I think, to whom it is. So, Riddhi, has advocacy specifically helped in advancing climate resilience efforts in Sint Maarten?
You already asked that.
Sorry? Oh, the next one. Sorry. You got 2 questions with Sint Maarten here, and this one is a different one. Sorry. That's on me. Nigel, this one's for you. Are there traditional practices or indigenous knowledge that have been useful in building climate resilience? And after Nigel is to everyone, of course. Sorry.
To answer your question, absolutely, absolutely. I think the way to go about all these issues is also to combine science with indigenous knowledge and practices. So if you combine them both together, you're gonna get a better outcome of what you want. So, for example, yeah, just the indigenous peoples in Brazil, the Amazon, they have their own practices that they use to be more resilient to, for example, heat waves or extreme weathers in the Amazon forest. So to learn from them, because they were the people that lived there the longest, they understand the climate the most. So to combine science and indigenous knowledge and practices is just, you're just creating a good synergy of them both and using them to help the greater society, to help the greater good. So yes, I think it will be a great idea to also take into account indigenous or traditional people's practices, just how they're doing it in Bonaire as well, just how they're doing it in Aruba or the other islands around the Caribbean. We're using traditional and ancient indigenous practices that we always learned from our ancestors to live with the environment, and I think using those knowledges, I think it would be pretty great to see how you could, like, yeah, build a better future and be more resilient to climate change.
So hopeful. Okay. No, two mentees and then one in the crowd. So I'm going to come to you, Chairman. I think I just saw your hand move. That was you, right? Okay, one moment. So I see Riddhi behind that wants to... Thank you. That helps so much, my dear Lord. Thank you. Technician, I can see the light. Okay.
I just wanted
Riddhi
to
wanted
add
quickly
that,
on that, and then
for the
Chairman.
indigenous knowledge, in St. Maarten, and I think across the Caribbean, we have houses with roofs that look like so. And that actually came from the Arawak tribes and the Amerindians, who used this triangular method of cementation and with soil and huts to make huts that were more resistant to winds, to harsh winds, because they noticed that we were in a more wind, rain driven area. And so if you see a lot of the houses on St. Maarten that have withstood hurricanes time and time again, they have like triangular roofs. Now, you know, we're moving a lot towards like concrete, etc. But that was just the contouring of our roofing actually came from, you know, houses in the past that have been so that was like hurricane resilient architecture using indigenous wisdom. I just wanted to give an example.
That is great additive. Thank you. Chairman?
Yeah, so I heard a lot of you saying that the Dutch Caribbean island must come together more for all the Caribbean islands. But what is the reason, according to you, that there is this disconnect between the Dutch Caribbean islands, and how can we make that better in the future?
Is there a specific person you want to ask that question, or just blanket?
I think all mentioned that, so for any.
To all of you that want to answer, great, but let's limit it to a minute, because then all of you get a chance to answer it. Go for it.
Yeah, if I look at my context of why it would be a possibility that there is a disconnect between the islands, is usually the construction that we found ourselves in when we were the Netherlands Antilles, and now the Bescas situation. Let's call it that. When we were the Netherlands Antilles, from what I remember, it was a lot of influence being given to Curacao, whereas the rest of the islands were also being kind of left out of the mix. And unfortunately, now we're experiencing kind of the same thing with Bonaire, St. Eustatius, and Saba. A lot of the attention and the big press is going to Bonaire, whereas Statia and Saba are kind of being left out of that equation as well. And completely, when you look at the Cos Islands, they are definitely outside of the boat at this moment. So that creates a sense of disconnect within the communities about how they look at other sister islands, not realizing that Bonaire isn't trying to get all the attention. Nope. It just happened to go that way, whereas
Bonaire took action.
Well, it's not that Bonaire took action. It's I'm being told to round off, but the issue is more that the attention is being given there because they're also the bigger island, and unfortunately that means that the government would then say, oh, we're doing something in the Dutch Caribbean, whereas they're doing something on Bonaire and are considering it the entire Dutch Caribbean, which isn't true.
We only have 2 more minutes in this lovely show, and that means that I have to kick it right back to the panelists online. In this case, you have a short, literally 30 seconds to 40 seconds answer to this.
Should I go first?
Please shoot at 40 seconds. Go.
Okay. So for me, I think the disconnect really comes from, touching on Danique's point, we were the Netherlands Antilles. I mean, we just heard from panelists, their parents are born in Curacao, one is from St. Maarten, they live on Bonaire. It's not that we're not connected. Our heritage is very much connected, especially in the Netherlands Antilles. We had the same currency, same health insurance. If you traveled to any of the islands and got injured or sick, your health insurance coverage covered across. Now, because of this split, we're seeing kind of this separation. And it doesn't make a lot of geographic sense, does it? Because the Cos Islands, you have 2 that are in the northern part, and Sint Maarten is in the leeward belt. But Sint Maarten is closer to Saba and Statia, which is why we were characterized as the ABC and the SSS islands. And now politically that has changed, and it's very confusing, and it's very, you know, Saba and Statia are much more reliant on Sint Maarten than they are on Bonaire, because we are closer regionally. We share resources, transportation, you know, goods and services.
I have to stop you. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, there is just this disconnect geographically, because
I have to stop you. You're a great speaker. Put yourself up on a list and we'll vote for you. I'm going to keep making that joke until you actually put yourself on a list. But I've been able to rail 3 minutes out to be able to do something here quickly. So let's just run through, not a question, but a few things. A, there's a call to action. You came here today as good people, good citizens, good reformers, good rebels, good people that know a little bit about smelling good food and waiting to go to it. So there's a QR code behind me in which you could scan, and if you want to support it, you can get A, more information, but B, you can also support the court case that is happening right now between Bonaire and the state of the Netherlands. It's Dutch on Dutch violence. It happens. Now, that's one. 2, I want to thank everyone that joined all of this, not just as the listeners, not just the panelists and the speakers, the people behind the curtains that have supported everything, but also people that have been tirelessly working behind the screens without actually being notified. It's the people in the right-hand corner. I want to give them a giant hand of applause. You can walk away. I see you. But mostly also, I want to round this off in a proper way, to point out that you don't have to do your civic duty by being here every day. You don't. It's something that we see in our society is slowly but surely becoming eroded, something that will show up in certain places and be scared that we might get attacked in certain ways. We might not know how to protest without voting, without being activistic, without breaking streets apart. You get the hints. But this is also one way, by actually going into conversations, by breaking fried breads, by listening to panelists from everywhere, by smiling, by healing. So the key words that I wanted to share with you today that I heard from everyone was to grow the understanding, to look each other in the eye, to love and care, to give each other support, to work together, to break down barriers. And if you can do this every day in your own life, you're probably helping someone else too. But since we're all one giant Dutch family, different boats, same shit though, I would say, let's try to do better all together. So scan if you can, eat if you need to, talk if you can, but change tomorrow and change the day after that as well. My name is Percy Celia Jr. I hope you enjoyed this activity, and I want to thank Salto, Balkhuizen-Zwijger, and all you beautiful people for being here. So let's give each other a hand of applause. And since I'm from the island, Dushiyu, Bampasumbundia. See y'all next time. Have a great day. People online, cheers, adieu, any language that you find. We're done.
Woo.
Cheers.
Can Nigel and Riddhi, can you turn this one up a bit?